So tonight we will go through our agenda, have board reports, and then we will have a presentation from NYU about the potential of a new university. With that, does anyone have any questions or comments on the agenda only before we go through the agenda? You on Zoom? Ms. Walsh.
Thank you, David Fitzgerald. I would ask the board to approve the Board of Trustees minutes held on Tuesday, December 20th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
I would ask the board to approve the schedule of accounts payable as follows. General fund $708,824. Pool fund 0. Capital fund 0. For a grand total of $708,824.
I'll offer that resolution.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Walsh, will you poll the board?
Trustee Cambani? Aye. Trustee Chair?
Aye.
Trustee Stewart?
Aye.
Trustee Longbody?
Aye.
And Mayor Fitzgerald?
Aye.
I would ask the board to approve the request to use public facility, the Cub Scout Pack 482 to use firefighters' ball on Sunday, February 5th, 2023, to hold their blue and gold ceremony subject to the approval of the fire chiefs.
I'll offer. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
I would ask the board to approve permanent status for Matthew Rhoda as a full-time laborer in the Public Works Department since he completed his 6-month probationary period in accordance with the Civil Service Commission guidelines.
I'll offer that resolution.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Walsh?
Trustee Cambani? Aye. Trustee Chair?
Aye.
Trustee Stewart?
Aye.
Trustee Longbody?
Aye.
And Mayor Fitzgerald?
Aye.
I would ask the board to authorize the surplus Public Works vehicle, a 2002 Schwartz water truck number 78, with VIN number J8DC4B1402700124.
I'll offer that resolution.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Ms. Walsh?
Trustee Cambani? Aye. Trustee Chair?
Aye.
Trustee Stewart?
Aye.
Trustee Longbody?
Aye.
And Mayor Fitzgerald?
Aye.
I would ask the board to authorize payment of change orders number 1 and 2 to Go West Electric for the village-wide LED streetlight projects as presented.
I'll offer the resolution.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Walsh?
Trustee Cambani? Aye. Trustee Chair?
Aye.
Trustee Stewart?
Aye.
Trustee Longbody?
Aye.
And Mayor Fitzgerald?
Aye.
I would ask the board to authorize payment of change order number 1 to Pioneer Landscaping and Asphalt Paving for the additional concrete walkway and feature pads for the multi-purpose replacement sports rink in the amount of $9,975.50.
I'll offer. Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Walsh?
Trustee Cambani? Aye. Trustee Chair?
Aye.
Trustee Stewart?
Aye.
Trustee Longbody?
Aye.
And Mayor Fitzgerald?
Aye.
I would ask the board to authorize to hire the following personnel in the Public Works Department subject to medical and drug and alcohol screening and approval of Nassau County Civil Service Commission's approval. Lucas LaBrie, a part-time cleaner at a contractual rate of $17.61, and Timothy Barrett, a full-time motor equipment operator with a contractual rate of $45,808.
I'll offer that resolution.
Second.
Any discussion?
Trustee Cambani? Aye. Trustee Chair?
Aye.
Trustee Stewart? Aye. Trustee Longbody?
Aye.
And Mayor Fitzgerald?
Aye.
I would ask the board to adopt a resolution wherein the general village elections will be held on Tuesday, March 21st, 2023, and that the polls thereof shall be opened at 12 noon and closed at 9 p.m. in the evening, and that the places of holding elections shall be as follows. Election District number 1, Lions Firehouse, Election Districts 2 and 3 at the Recreation Pool Building, and Election District number 4 at the Atlantic Avenue Firehouse.
I'll offer. Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Walsh?
Trustee Cambani? Aye. Trustee Chair?
Aye.
Trustee Stewart? Aye. Trustee Longbody?
Aye.
And Mayor Fitzgerald?
Aye.
I would ask the board to ratify the approval of the village to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the village of South Floral Park, wherein the village of Floral Park will provide catch basin cleaning services as outlined in the IMA, and authorize the mayor or village administrator to sign said agreement. I'll offer the resolution.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Ms. Walsh?
Trustee Cambani? Aye. Trustee Chair?
Aye.
Trustee Stewart.
Aye.
Trustee Longbody.
Aye.
And Mayor Fitzgerald.
Aye.
I would ask the board to temporarily promote Detective Christopher Timms to the rank of sergeant pursuant to section 64 of the New York State Civil Service Law, with such promotion to last the duration of medical leave of Sergeant Cosmo until March 21st, 2023, unless sooner terminated or extended further at the discretion of the village. During the term of this temporary appointment, Detective Tim will receive a contractual rate of pay of $177,562, provided by the collective bargaining agreement between the village and the Floral Benevolent Association for the rank of sergeant. And upon the termination of this temporary appointment, Detective Tim will revert to the rank of detective, and his rate of pay shall revert to the rate of pay of detective then in effect for an officer with the length of service of Detective Timms pursuant to the CBA.
I'll offer the resolution.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Ms. Walsh?
Trustee Pambana? Aye. Trustee Chiara?
Aye.
Trustee Stewart?
Aye.
Trustee Longbody?
Aye.
And Mayor Fitzgerald.
Aye.
That will be all, Mayor.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll start the board reports, and we will start with Deputy Mayor Dr. Lindsay.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming out this evening. It's good to see you, and we're looking forward to your participation and input. I'd like to begin with the fire department and welcome Chief Dodson, Chief Hemmerman, Chief Bennett, Chief Luger, and Chief O'Connor of our fire department, as well as all of our firefighters who are here and members of our rescue department. It's good to see you. With the holidays come enjoyable and fun-filled activities in our village. While many of us have partaken of those traditions, our first responders have been at multiple fire-related or emergency calls on a daily basis, with the New Year's weekend bringing an extraordinary volume of calls. Starting on Friday evening, December 30th, there was a serious motor vehicle accident on Jericho Turnpike, and only minutes later, a call came in from mutual aid to Elmont for a serious house fire with life-threatening injuries to 3 residents and injuries to at least 2 firefighters. Saturday, New Year's Eve, saw a large number of calls begin again around 1 a.m. And between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m., the department, and that always includes our rescue company, responded to 8 calls. That's 8 calls in 5 hours. All of these calls were separated by less than 1 hour apart from the prior calls. That's not even enough time to handle a call, treat a patient on the scene, transport to the hospital, and return to full car. Then on Saturday night, chiefs and department members were moving continually from one call to the next with no time at all between. On Sunday, New Year's Day, the calls also began at 1 a.m. They continued with some very serious cases for our rescue company throughout the day, and then, like the night before, between 5 and 7 p.m., there were 4 calls in a 2-hour period. And for the 3rd straight day, Mondays, yesterday's first call was at 1 a.m. again. It is important to note that this weekend's rescue calls were all covered, and our Floral Park residents were cared for every time. Thankfully, we saw that what we saw this weekend is not typical, but our volunteer chiefs, firefighters, and rescue EMTs are called out during the day and into the night on a very frequent basis. What I'd like you to do, I'd like to ask the members, current members and past members of the Floral Park Fire Department and police who are here, please stand. All of you, please. Now, and members, rescue, everybody, and police. And for the audience and board, I'd like to ask you now to applaud our volunteer fire department. For their joint significant contributions to our welfare and safety. Shortly, Mayor Fitzgerald will be introducing Chief of Department James Dodson to speak more about our rescue ambulance services. And again, thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. Continuing to the Department of Public Works, we start off with thanks to our DPW as well. You may remember the very windy night of Friday, December 23rd, as the temperature began to free fall into the teens. Around p.m. In that dangerous weather, a tree fell on a house on the north side. Superintendent Kevin Ganane and our DPW crew worked into the night to safely remove the tree from the house as the weather conditions deteriorated. It prevented any injuries or damage to the house. Again, thanks to DPW and our other first responders, such as our police officers. Our new recycling schedule went into effect this week. Only paper and cardboard now goes out on irregularly scheduled recycling days. Mixed plastic, cans, and glass are now picked up every Wednesday, except on holiday weeks, where there is no pickup of mixed plastics and glass or special collection. E-waste and Freon will now be picked up 24 hours after it's called in to Public Works. Because of Monday holidays, there will be no special pickup or mixed plastic and glass pickups on this Wednesday, January 4th, and Wednesday, January 18th, due to the Martin Luther King holiday. So we've started the recycling program, but we're changing it for tomorrow and 2 weeks later because of the holidays. From our chambers of commerce and our businesses, thank you for shopping and dining local this holiday season. It was wonderful to see crowds making their gift purchases, dining out, and just picking up needed items at our local stores. Your support of our businesses in Floral Park and Stuart Manor is greatly appreciated. And finally, thank you all. The holiday season has once again been breathtakingly beautiful in our village. Our homes and businesses' bright lights and festive decorations made our village sparkle and shine, especially for our children. Here in Floral Park, we personify the holiday spirit. Thanks to one and all for that. And now we wish you, your families, and all in our village a happy, healthy new year, one that brings joy and peace to you all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Conrad. Trustee Chiara.
I'd like to start off by wishing everybody a happy, healthy, and safe new year. Hopefully it'll be a good year for all of us in 2023. So from the building department, last year the village entered into an energy performance contract with Johnson Controls to update existing buildings, conserve energy, and to save on utility costs. The project started last week, which will include interior, exterior, sports field, LED lighting upgrades, HVAC equipment and controls replacement, pipe insulation, weatherization of doors and windows, and solar panel. This work will continue throughout the winter and be completed by late spring. This work should result in significant savings for our village. The building department is upgrading their records management and permit software systems this year. The program will help with efficiency and create a more streamlined permitting process. The transition will be seamless, and the goal is to have online permitting available sometime this year. Currently, there are no updates for Colbert Avenue and Centennial Hall projects. I would like to thank Superintendent Renee Marcus and the team for continually improving their processes, making them more user-friendly for our residents. I have no updates from the police department.
Thank you, Trustee Chiara. Trustee Stewart.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to wish you all a happy new year and thank you for coming out. I would encourage you to consider joining your civic association, as it is a great way to get information on happenings in the village, as well as to meet some of your wonderful neighbors. As for the rec center, I'd like to thank the recreation staff, Gina Karen, as well as Darlene Lanza from Village Hall, for their help in our very successful 12 Days of Christmas pool membership drive. About 100 memberships were sold, and residents received a lovely gift with their purchase. It's so amazing to have staff that is 100% on board with new ideas that will benefit the residents. Although the pool is currently empty, we have begun to plan for our summer to 2023. We are taking applications for summer employment. So if you know a kid in the neighborhood who's looking for a job this summer, the applications can be found on the website. For the MTA and the 3TC, as many of you know, 3TC and the MTA have stated the need to make the temporary vehicular gate at Tunnel Street permanent. In one of our December meetings, we had a community outreach specialist from 3TC here to talk to residents and address their concerns, or listen to their concerns. The village board, along with several community groups, including Floral Park Little League, Indian soccer and basketball, as well as residents from around the village, are vehemently opposed to such a change. 3TC and the MTA promised residents to return this area back to the way it was prior to construction. This change to a permanent gate is a grave safety concern, as that gate is approximately 10 feet from the base of the tunnel under the Hempstead line of the railroad. This tunnel connects our residents to our beautiful recreation center. Hundreds of kids on bikes go through this tunnel weekly during the summer to access the pool, and as well as during the spring and fall to access the fields, practice, and tiny town. People in strollers. It is well utilized. The village board continues to communicate these concerns to the MTA and the 3TC. Additionally, we continue to monitor the ongoing work related to the third track. And as always, we encourage residents to reach out directly to the MTA with questions and concerns, as we have found this is the most effective way for residents to communicate with them. The MTA can be reached at www.contact.mta.info/customer feedback or by phone at 516-203-4955. This is an automated response, but if you ask for more options and then ask for comments and concerns, you will get a live person. Yet another engineer has been assigned to oversee the platform repairs at the Floral Park Railroad Station. Superintendents Marcus and Ganane, Village Administrator Jerry Bamberg, and I met with the new engineer and members of his team last week. We have been assured that this work will be done safely and with as little interruption to ridership as possible. Much of this work will be concrete, and I ask you to exercise caution as you go onto the platform, both from the staircases and escalators as well as when you come off the train. Be aware of your surroundings as portions of the platform may be sectioned off forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Stewart. Trustee Longbody.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Thank you all for being here, and Happy New Year. For the Floral Park Library, just a reminder about the ongoing construction at the front entrance, the temporary entrance, and book dropper at the back of the building. With the new year comes a full slate of activities, events at the library, as well as exciting news. Our beloved library, established in 1923, will be celebrating its 100th anniversary. Please watch their calendar and social media for all the upcoming special events planned throughout the year. More to come on this. Friends of the Library Book Club meeting is rescheduled to Monday, January 9th, with an evening edition on Thursday, January 12th. Wednesday, January 11th at 1 p.m. is the Friends of the Library meeting, and the Board of Trustees meeting is at 7:30. And the library is closed Monday, January 16th for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Upcoming activities include yoga, art classes, English language learner classes, Chefs of the Future, story time, and more. Please check the library website, www.floorparklibrary.org. For Floor Village Studio, 2023 will be an exciting year for Floor Village Studios as it celebrates the first 25 years of community television. Floor Village Studios is a concept that began in 1992. During negotiations to renew Cablevision franchise agreements, village officials explored the possibility of founding a community television studio to serve the four incorporated villages of Belrose, Floral Park, South Floral Park, and Stewart Manor. A cooperative agreement was reached in 1995. Between that time and 1997, the studio was designed and built on the second floor of Village Hall, right behind us in the next room. During 1997, interested residents were recruited to become hosts, producers, crews, and more for the studio. And finally, the first shows were produced in late 1997, and the first programs went on air in 1998. To commemorate the first 25 years, all year long, the final shows of the weekly program block will be the flashback shows, looking back over the first 25 years. The first flashback this week is the 2008 Floral Park Centennial Fireworks. It will be a very interesting and entertaining look back all year long. This week, the Mayor's Report airing at 9 p.m. will feature the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. This show will present insight into the village's plans for the funds, as well as details on what the program is all about. For this and a list of all the shows, please visit the website or watch your local provider station. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Longbody. And further to that show of the Mayor's Report, which is on last night, Thursday night, Sunday morning, we also go through with Dr. Lamagno the survey that we had in the middle of the fall. So please take the opportunity to watch that, and if you miss it this week, it's always on the Watch Now section of the Floor Village website, Floor Village Studio website. Further with Trustee Stewart with regards to the Long Island Railroad, I think many of you know the railroad for every quarter puts out a scorecard where residents are encouraged to opine on how they felt the work has been going on in the community. The last scorecard is for the quarter that just closed, December 31st, and it is due back by January 15th. So I encourage all residents, this is your last opportunity to chime in on the work that's been done in the village with 3TC, and 3TC does get monetary rewards depending on the outcome of the survey and the responses that the relevant back. With that, I'll ask for a motion to close the portion of the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you all for coming out this evening. What I'd like to do now is introduce Chief of the Department, Jeff Dodson, to give an overview of how we got here with the need for, the potential need, I should say, for an additional ambulance company from outside the building.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. The current state of our department, we are a 100% volunteer department, so people have regular full-time jobs that they attend to while volunteering in the village. We are seeing increased call volumes. Additionally, due to personnel issues at the hospitals, we're seeing increased triage times. That have led from a call that we normally turned around in an hour to upwards of 2 hours, taking away from our members' times as they volunteer. Additionally, the training requirements are very, very stringent for an advanced life support ambulance. We've recently had to step down to a basic life support ambulance. So when we do have calls that require advanced life support, we either call in an ambulance, well, we automatically call in an ambulance from Nassau County Ambulance Service to come in, as they are advanced life support. When they do come in, if they do need to transport, we also have to have a police officer drive that ambulance contractually due to the fact that the Nassau County Ambulance is a union organization, so we are seeing increased overtime through the police department. Additionally, the normal mutual aid that we do get from the county has seen increased times. Just the other day we had a mutual aid, the ambulance was coming from Bayville with a 30-minute lead time. So in order to provide innovative solutions to our residents, to provide them with the care that we feel is necessary and that they expect, we are proposing that we bring in a third-party service to supplement our current rescue company. And with that said, I'd like to introduce Nicole Hansen from NYU Langone, who is going to go over a presentation on how they can service our company, our village. Thank you.
Do a handout.
Yes, there are more videos available for everyone who would like to follow along. Hi, my name is Nicole Hansen. I am the manager for the EMS department in Nassau County for NYU Long Island. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Our proposal for Floral Park is to provide the community with one ALS ambulance. The ALS ambulance would be staffed by a paramedic and by basic life support. This would eliminate the need for a police officer to drive the ambulance to the hospital. This would be working in conjunction with the existing volunteer department. This would be in conjunction with the existing volunteers. We would be taking the more critical patients who require advanced life support, so anyone who needed the services of a paramedic, anything that is over and above what the volunteers are currently able to provide, we would be there to provide that service. Because it is a dedicated ambulance to Floral Park, it would reduce the response times. I know that county is currently severely understaffed and struggling with managing the increased call volume in the county as a whole. By having an ambulance provided by us in the community, we would have a much shorter response time Right now, we are involved in Garden City. The response times, our average response times to most calls are under 5 minutes. So you would have the ambulance on scene within 5 to 10 minutes, whereas right now, if you're waiting for a county bus, that county bus could be anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes out. So we would be there when you guys are calling 911 to make sure that you are getting the care that you need. Other additional things that we would be providing is other resources to the community. We would be here to support the police department, to support the volunteer ambulance department, as well as the fire department. So if the volunteers need CPR recertification, we can provide that. If there's any advanced training that anyone is interested in participating in, we would be able to help facilitate that. And all of this we would be doing at no cost to the village. So right now, we are a fairly large department. A lot of our resources are currently in the city. We have 21 ambulances in Brooklyn and Manhattan. We have 2 ambulances in Garden City that are dedicated to Garden City. Our model is to dedicate an ambulance to the community because we want to be a part of the community. It's really that we want to make sure that we're giving the members and the people who live here the necessary resources that they need. So with that, we'll open up to any initial questions. Yes.
So if a person calls 911 and they need service,
Yes.
they're going to be responsible for the fee that they're going to incur.
Any fees that are incurred, so we do collect billing information. So if you call an ambulance right now and you do get Nassau County, they also collect billing information.
I'm just asking what and why you're going to charge. You a schedule as far as
Yes.
the DLS caller? Can you tell us what it's going to be?
No, I cannot tell you exact numbers because it depends on what your insurance provider is. So just like with any other bill that you would receive for health care services, you are responsible for the copay. So if, for example, your insurance says your copay for an ambulance ride is $50, then you are responsible for $50.
Or if it's $500, they're going to be responsible.
Then that would be.
And if you have no insurance?
If you have no insurance, the hospital will provide you with a bill, and you can then, at that point, they will work with you in order to mitigate that bill. So anyone who doesn't have insurance, they have a financial assistance program, and for the most part, most people who are uninsured will end up paying about 19% of what that bill is, which works out to about the average copay.
It sounds like you're well aware of the billing process. Would you please explain to the public the Medicaid billing process?
Medicaid does not receive a bill. Medicaid, if you are transported by the ambulance, it is incorporated into your hospital bill. There is no bill for anyone who is covered by Medicaid.
I don't care where the bill comes from. If the ambulance service is provided by the hospital building, it's still a bill, correct?
Regardless of the ambulance, if you are a Medicaid subscriber, if you are being transported by NYU, by Northwell, by Nassau County, and they bill Medicaid, we do not bill. The ambulance does not bill, it's incorporated into the hospital bill as a whole.
Okay, well, if you go to the Medicaid site, it doesn't explain it quite that way, but I'm not arguing at the moment. I can only read. Basically,
Okay.
this is now we're talking about transport. I'm asking now about care.
Okay.
Is there any charge from NYU Langone EMS service for a person who has care from the ambulance department, but are amiss?
If they receive care and are not transported, their insurance will be billed. So
If they have no insurance,
If they have no insurance, they will receive a bill. Again, they can reach out for any assistance if necessary, if there is a requirement for that. After 180 days, if that bill is not going to collections, that bill is not going anywhere beyond between you and the hospital. So if you are unable to pay and you don't reach out to the hospital to work out a billing system or a payment plan, the bill doesn't go anywhere beyond that after they've issued you a restatement.
is that in the agreement between NYU and the village?
That I'm not sure about in terms of in the contract. It's in the billing agreement with the, I'd have to look at the.
Trustee Chair is saying to me, no, I don't know if that's true.
Sorry. That's just the standard billing, the standard billing practices. They just passed the No Surprises Act. So if you're receiving a bill, that's covered by that. So if there's any bill, you will be notified of that bill. Yes.
So in slide 5, it says here, the ambulance service is not
sorry, I didn't
Is
do
that the
that.
same flat fee for refusal? So ambulance responds, you know, I sign on the back, and I'm going. Is that the
Then
same?
you're not, yes, you'll
What is,
be,
what is that fee?
it depends on your insurance. Again, it's,
So each gets to be a different charge.
it depends on what your insurance is.
You're saying what I have to pay out of pocket.
I'm saying that if,
So I don't have insurance.
so if you don't have insurance and if you're just going for a refusal, it is a flat rate. It is a rate. I don't know the rate off the top.
I believe it's an assessment rate.
It's, I believe it's
It's not a-
assessed. It's
Do you
based
know what that
on,
rate is?
it's based on
I
the.
do not know, we can find that out.
Yeah, we can find out, but I believe it's based on what, I believe it's based on the Medicare, Medicaid rates.
Is it usually a set rate?
I believe that it's a set rate. Yes.
Just one other quick question if I can. So, I totally understand the need for why this needs to happen. I used to be chief of another department, I get it. EMS is for volunteers to do it, they serve all the it's a lot. The last question is, if it's going to be a dual response, is there still going to be voluntary ambulance responding as well as a paid
So as of right now, the contract would be that we would take first due and that the volunteers would be second due. If that can be, you know, in the future, if that needs to change or if it needs to be in order to make sure that more calls are responded to and that we're working on all the details and how to kind of idealize the dispatching process. So for example, if you have two calls coming out at the same time and you have one call that is very serious call and one that is less serious. So say for example, someone called they stubbed their toe versus someone who's having severe chest pain. We want to make sure that we're sending the appropriate resources there. So we want to make sure that the paramedic who can do a cardiac assessment with an EKG monitor would be going to that patient who needs a cardiac assessment versus a trauma call, which would be potentially a BLS or a different level of call. So we're trying to make sure that we prioritize the calls appropriately so that the community is receiving the care that is appropriate.
It may be helpful that for the, residents to know, in other agreements that you have with other villages and municipalities, do they have different schedules for billing? So based on what the village or city has, that schedule plan versus maybe another.
We don't have schedules of billing with the town or the village in particular.
Or
It's
agreement on what
insurance.
would you bill?
It's those agreements are with the arrangement between the hospital and the insurance companies. So it's the way it is established is the hospital has these agreements with all Aetna, United Healthcare, Empire, Blue Cross Blue Shield. They have those agreements, and based on those agreements, there's a schedule for what ambulances can charge. And when those charges are, and then there's also that charge is kind of averaged out so that when you don't have insurance, that's kind of what the number you're going to be seeing. So it's nothing really out of the ordinary, but it's not an agreement between the hospital and our department and the village. It's between the village and the insurance companies, whoever your individual insurance is.
I guess maybe you're rephrasing it.
Okay.
It's could the village of Floral Park, if they're looking to bring a third-party ambulance service, could they say, we're looking at NYU, we're looking at a private ambulance service, and decide, you know what, if you respond to a call and it's a refusal, we don't want to get it. Is that within the ability of the village to make that decision, just on the contract with the ambulance service?
I'm not sure. I actually do believe that the refusals are, again, it's a fee that is an agreement between the hospital and the insurance companies. Because we're billing the insurance, we're not billing, the process is that the bill goes to the insurance.
The bill's going to the individual patient.
The bill goes to the insurance first.
That's for the patient. The patient has the insurance. It's going to the patient.
It's going to the patient's insurance, and then any responsibility that the patient has is then being forwarded to the patient. So it's the same thing as if you go to the doctor, right? You go to the doctor, you give them your insurance card, and you have a $25 copay. It's the same process, but it's an ambulance in your home responding to your emergency. Yes.
I'm going to take you off the hook for a moment, if you don't mind. All right? I'm going to address this to the village board. Does the village board have information on what the services cost, inasmuch as the patient or the resident is going to be the final payer of this bill? We pay zero right now.
Right, we do not.
Okay, when I read the invitation to this meeting, it said the decision to be made by January 17th, I think I read.
I thought we made tonight.
No, I said that, Mayor. I said, have you asked for this information? a big deal, I think.
The only answer we got was a similar answer with, it depends on the insurance carrier.
And that was acceptable?
We didn't agree on
No,
it.
I don't know, I'm just saying, is it acceptable? I think as a board, I certainly would get my list of services and the charges that they're going to charge. I mean, we have a zero pay now, except for what Susan Walsh gave out in December, as far as what the county charges out.
All right.
If I can handle that, Mr. Mayor, so when we do have an ALS call and we do bring in the Nassau County ambulance, they are receiving a bill from Nassau County currently. So there is a current bill that they do get for an ALS call.
No, I know, Chief, but I'm not asking about what the county does, I'm asking what NYU does.
I'm just explaining.
It's the same process.
Currently, it's the
So you
same.
want to know the amount?
That's not true all the time, so I'd like to rebut that. If that paramedic gets onto our ambulance with our ALS staff, and there's no bill incurred.
That is correct, and that's why I said if they transport them.
Is there a basic fee from Nassau County? Is there a basic fee? Do they charge? basic
Again,
fees?
as Nicole
No,
stated, it's all dependent
all based
upon
on
the
the insurance
negotiation between the insurance
So-
company.
And again, there's no set fee, and those fees are updated by the insurance companies on a relatively regular basis based on Medicare. So, for example, if you have United, your copay may be one thing. If you have Aetna, you might have another thing. But they're all within a relative, reasonable amount of money where, if you are insured, that's what your copay is. And if you wanted to reach out to your individual insurer, they can absolutely tell you. And ambulance copays are clearly outlined in most people's explanation of benefits within your insurance.
One of the questions that we submitted to NYU Langone was specifically that question. What would be the base price for an ambulance from NYU Langone, the dollar amount for a basic ambulance to respond to a house and take the person to the hospital, assuming no extra medicines, tests were needed, and beyond that, what were typical basic costs when some unusual or special treatment or medication was administered in the ambulance? We have not received the answer to that question yet.
I'd like to go back to the Medicare issue for a second. I know you said it goes from the hospital, I guess the ER room, or where the bill is coming from.
Yes, the bill
Would you
is.
please explain to the public here the Medicaid requirements as far as giving advance notice to a patient if the ambulance doesn't believe it's an emergency that warrants a transport by ambulance?
If you were being transported by the ambulance,
No.
if
Yeah,
you're being transported by the ambulance, it will be covered by the insurance, regardless of how it's perceived. The billing associate will submit the bill to your insurance, and it will be processed as such. Okay, if you pick up the phone and you call 911, it's an emergency. That's how that's deemed by the insurance companies.
So I went to the Medicare site,
Okay.
and publication 11021 from the Center of Medical Services, I believe it is, Medicare and Medicaid Services, last revised January 22. They gave us a specific example. Mrs. Lee falls in her front yard and her neighbor calls an ambulance. She isn't in distress, but she can't stand up without having ankle pain. When the ambulance arrives, Mrs. Lee wants to go to the hospital, but she doesn't have a serious medical emergency. And her health won't be in danger if she goes to the ER another way, like a car or a taxi. Since Mrs. Lee can get to the hospital by another type of transportation without a serious risk to her health, Medicare will not cover the ambulance transportation. In this situation, the ambulance company is not required to give Mrs. Lee any formal notice, but out of courtesy may give her an APN. And I think you're aware of what that is, right? So that she knows she'll be billed for that service.
She'll be receiving a bill for the service through Medicare, but when we make sure we document it, we make sure that we document so that it is deemed as such that it is billed as an emergency. Does that make sense? Where if you're
I'm Mrs. Lee and I break my,
and
I
you
hurt
broke your
my
ankle.
ankle, but I can
Okay.
get to the hospital without an ambulance.
Okay.
Now, how are you going to document it different than what it is?
When we have the option saying it was dispatched as an emergency, that starts the chain of how it's processed on the documentation side. So it's like, okay, so Mrs. Lee broke her ankle. Is she able to walk on her own? No. So she requires a stretcher. When she requires a stretcher to get onto the ambulance, to be transported to the hospital, then it's deemed as an emergency.
And
So
she breaks her arm?
did she require pain medication? Did she require a splint? Did she require some level of care so that she could be brought to the hospital? And those are all things that we were very cognizant of making sure that those, you're receiving care, so it's an emergency to some level to some level or another. And then two, we're making sure that we document that we've provided a level of care that would be deemed as an emergency. It's not, for the example, and you're not saying, oh, well, Mrs. Lee, your arm seems to be moving in a very odd manner. We're going to call you a taxi and we're going to hope for the best. We're going to be providing care, and that care is billable, and that shows to Medicare and Medicaid that a service was rendered and that it was an emergency.
And if I just want to make sure I'm correct, Medicare will pay 80% of the charge. Is that correct? Minus any deductible?
Minus deductibles and minus, however, a lot of people have additional Medicare supplements. So
I was just talking straight Medicare.
straight Medicare is 80%, and I believe that 20% afterwards, I'm not sure how that's handled exactly, but I don't believe that it's pursued from billing. I'm not sure. I have to follow up on that one.
Well, I would hope that that would be in the agreement that the village executes also, since if I'm the aided, I'm not a party to this contract, but I'm yet going to be required to make the payment. The village is executing this for me. And so I trust on you all to incorporate into the agreement the coverage of the 20% that I might be responsible for. And, the deductible is also out there, which is $233 as of 2022. I don't know what it is in 2023, but it did go down because Medicare premiums went down.
Archie, maybe tomorrow you can give me a call and we can go over all these things.
How about lunch or breakfast?
In my office.
Well, give me a call. Saying earlier about very often calls initiated by a third party. See somebody stumble and coming out of church. There's no apparent injury. The person has no intention of going to the hospital. Is that a billable charge because the ambulance responded?
If the ambulance responded and the patient says, I'm fine, I don't want any care, they will not receive a bill. The only time the patient would receive care is if we render receive a bill is if we render some level of care. So if there's no care and the patient says, no, I'm good, I'm fine, I stumbled, I lost my balance, and I'm all right now, and they have nothing to do, they will not
Blood
receive.
pressure, you sit them down, take their blood pressure to reassure them. Is that treatment? Is that initiation?
I'm not sure. You need consent to treat someone. So without, if someone says, hey, don't touch me, I don't want anything, I don't want vitals, I don't want nothing, I'm fine, and then that's one thing. If they say, hey, I really want you to check me out, I want you to treat me, they may be liable for a bill. It depends on what their insurance is and what that whole scenario plays out.
But all that's the same with Nassau County.
Yes, same exact thing as what happens with Nassau County and their billing. Yes, sir.
I have a question. We certainly have gone down the road of building.
Yes.
How about service?
Absolutely.
If you're providing service to other municipalities in a local area, do you have any data, facts, figures, numbers on your response time? The times you couldn't respond? Where did you get another ambulance from if you had your two already out on the pool? The day-to-day that we go through, can you explain your service to us?
Absolutely. So we currently operate in Nassau County and Garden City. We provide Garden City with 2 ALS ambulances. Those 2 ambulances have responded to just over 2,000 calls in the last calendar year. Of those 2,000 calls, we were unable to respond to approximately 150 of those based on multiple calls coming out at the same time or extended triage times. Those ambulances spend 100% of their time in Garden City. We do not have mutual aid agreements. They are going only to Garden City calls. And we, sorry, I lost my train of thought real quick. And our average response time is less than 8 minutes. On the most part, we're to most calls under 5. So, for example, we had a 3-month-old today who was choking, and we had an ambulance on scene in under 2 minutes.
One, just to supplement that, the police department still doing responding, just to clarify that. Can we take there's a question on the chat that has to do with service also.
Sure.
The question is, does the patient have a choice as to the hospital they are taken to?
Absolutely. So the patient has freedom of choice to go to whatever hospital within reason. So for example, if you wanted to go out to Conch Bay and Riverhead, you might have some issues. It's a very long drive. However, if you are looking to go to area hospitals, say you get all of your care at NYU, you get all of your care at a North Shore in Hyde Park, that is reasonable, with a bit of an asterisk. One, that needs to make sure that the hospital is not on diversion, or that means that the hospital is able to receive patients. At any point in time, we talked about how the response times and triage times are extended. Hospitals sometimes in the area will request a break from receiving patients so that they can kind of catch up and make room for additional patients. If the hospital is on diversion, unfortunately, we cannot override that. That is the county system. They determine who is receiving or not based on the hospital's request. If the hospital is not able to receive, we'll talk to the patient and say, is there an alternative that we, is kind of agreeable to everyone? And two, the other thing is it needs to make sure that the hospital is appropriate for the medical condition that you're experiencing. For example, if you are having a heart attack and you want to go to a hospital that does not care for heart attacks, we cannot bring you there because that's not a hospital that you necessarily want to go to. You want to make sure that you're going to a hospital that can provide you the appropriate care. And our providers will, have a conversation with you. But if you have a desire to go to a different hospital that is not an NYU hospital, that's not a problem.
Does the residents have when they call up and request an ambulance, can they stipulate what ambulance they want?
It goes in the due service. So if we are first due and we're available, you would receive an NYU ambulance. If it is a second due call, you would receive the volunteers and so forth. Yes.
It's not uncommon for a park to have multiple back-to-back 80 cases. You're saying you're dedicating an ambulance to Floral Park?
Yes.
Hypothetically, that ambulance now is handling an 80 case. At the very same time, and the staff can bear me out on this, we get a second call. How are you going to backfill that one ambulance? Are you going to have another come into Floral Park?
So at this time, in the beginnings of this relationship, as we kind of find out what the call volume is, because right now, county takes a lot of the call volume, and unfortunately, they're not very willing to share a lot of that data. So if it turns out that, yes, there is a need for an additional ambulance, we'll have a conversation and adding an additional ambulance if necessary. But as of right now, the goal is to prioritize the criticality of the call. So you have multiple calls at the same time. The patient who's going to require a higher level of care based on the call type would receive a higher level of care ambulance. And that would be working with dispatchers and trying to determine how that's going to work out. So that's
Chief Farron, the rescue company would be second due, and Chief Dotson, the rescue company would be for all fire calls, correct? First step.
yes, sir.
The data that you were talking about from the county, we as a local fire department have that data. We keep track of our rescue calls. I'm the department secretary, our assistant department secretary, Frank Wade, he's very good at differentiating between our rescue calls, those transported by our ambulance, or another service such as the county or Stewart Manor or New Light Park or our other mutual aid agreements. So we can provide you with that data so you can make an educated decision on how to properly cover this town.
Joe, does that data also recognize when there's calls back to back?
Absolutely.
And that would also be, defining if there's, potentially busy times. It sounds like 1 a.m. was a very busy time the last couple of days. Here, that shifts, unfortunately. The 911 emergencies don't all happen on a nice schedule, which would be really great. But, we kind of determine where the resources are needed and if we can, build from there in terms of supporting the community. Ma'am in the back.
Your comments about where they would pick what hospital they would want to go to,
Yes.
that doesn't sound like an emergency anymore. To me, if it's an emergency, are you allowed to pay at the hospital?
So if it is a true life and death situation, no. We will have a conversation with the family saying, listen, we really need to go to the closest hospital. Where you are situated in Floral Park might make a bit of a difference, but from the very center of Floral Park, there are a number of hospitals that one might be able to choose from. If it is less severe. The beauty of having an advanced life support ambulance is we have the ability to stabilize people a little bit more because we have more tools in our toolkit. If we're able to stabilize a patient and then honor their wishes and bring them to the hospital where they want to go, after we spend some time maybe giving them some medications or giving, starting an IV and starting fluid, and then we can have that conversation of, okay, what's your preferred hospital?
There were no state guidelines guiding that?
There are. It's a time. It's time-based. So if it takes me 10 minutes to get to NYU, and it takes me 10 minutes to get to New Hyde Park, I can go to either one. So it's less that it's a quote-unquote true emergency and more that, we have the ability to go to multiple locations. There's a follow-up question?
I have a follow-up, yes. Are you there to pick up any assisted calls at all, psych calls, violent calls?
Yes.
Intoxicated calls?
Yes.
You pick up all?
Everything. We will pick up everything.
But Kathy, on those calls, I would probably say that our police department would probably have to respond also, and they would have to rise.
That would be based on the police department's policies and procedures as well. So we would, it might be one of the few times that we would require a police officer to ride with us to the hospital for safety. But other than that, yes.
Before we ask another question, Bill 12, Donnie, is there anyone on Zoom that wants to ask a question without chatting? If you can raise your hand and we'll mute them.
There is somebody, Judy Studinsky.
Can you
I just
unmute?
asked her to unmute.
Hi, Jim. Dad.
My concern, and I'm going to be very blunt to this woman, why would an N1 ambulance take me to Rosalind to St. Francis if the employees are from NYU? Aren't they going to get into trouble from their superiors? I'm very apprehensive about that.
Oh, no, not at all.
Thank you to all the volunteers of our Floral ambulance. That's what makes Floral a great place to live, even though I haven't had to do it for 30 years.
Thank you.
So, no, there's no punishment, there's no, quote-unquote, getting in trouble. It's what's in the best interest of the patient, what their interests are. So the patient says, I've been going to St. Francis and I've been getting my care there for 30 years, we're going to go to St. Francis. Like, I'm not going to argue with you, that's where your health care is being provided. Our guys, as long as you're stable enough to make that ride, you can go where you want. Again, we're not going to go out to Riverhead, but as long as it's within a reasonable amount of time, we're going to try to do our best to get you where you want to be. It doesn't matter to us. We want to serve the community, we want to make sure that your needs are being met, and if that means taking you to St. Francis, then so be it. I will never, I've managed a department, I've never, our 3 years at Garden City, for almost 4 years now, I've never given my guys a hard time about taking the patient where they want to go. That's not even on my list of top 10 things to complain about to them.
That's good to hear, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there?
May I ask the board a question, please?
Sure.
Would you please consider, while you're trying to make a decision, I'm aware that our volunteers are so wonderful. There are less of them each year, and they are overworked. I mean, I've seen them leave the tables on holiday and so forth, but I know you don't have time for my diatribe. So I will just say that, do you think, I know it would be, to be honest, I would avoid an ambulance at all costs anyway, and I don't mean finances. I would be more inclined if I felt to call an ambulance because I knew it would be a Floral neighbor. There would be somebody in that crew that I would recognize from somewhere, rather than have just a stranger come in. Do you think a lot of people would die because they would not have strangers in their home that they don't love?
I would hope not. I hope if they have a serious condition or issue, that they would call an ambulance and whatever the first one that shows up, whatever assistance is offered, they would help.
Okay, thank you. I disagree. I think a lot of people won't call, and I don't mean heart attacks, you have no choice. But like you fall, and you broke your leg, and you just like, okay, I'll stay still until the morning until I get my family or whatever. I don't know. Thank you very much.
Donnie, is anyone else on Zoom? Before we...
So I'm clear, right now, first due is volunteers, and that's usually
under this agreement, automatically, the first due is falling to NYU.
Yes.
As of right now, my observation has been when the ambulance comes, I see all 4 chiefs' cars show up within time. Are the chiefs still expected to respond when NYU is first due in responding? Are we still using resources from our fire department for calls that NYU can answer?
I mean, that's going to be up to the decision of the chief's department, but it would not be necessary. We would be handling all the calls independently, but if they wanted to come and give a hand, or come say hi, or, you know, see how everything's going, or check in on the, you know, the person who called 911, then I'm not going to stop them.
And my next question is for the mayor and board. If we privatize part of the fire department, the rescue squad, are we impacting eligibility for grants, federal funding, et cetera, because we're no longer truly volunteer?
Not that I know of. You could ask the question, but I haven't heard that anyway.
It's just a question.
Good question.
This question has, my other concern is, my understanding is part of my taxes go to fund the fire department, the rescue squad, police, everything, et cetera. By now making my chances of paid service much greater, it's a backdoor tax to me, and it's a reduction of services by the village. And I feel like this is all very rushed, and it's just kind of like, here's an email, we're going to privatize ambulance service going forward. And it's with the for-profit companies. And my other question is about the agreement. Is this just on a call-by-call basis, or is there a guaranteed revenue for NYU on the Like, do we have, they say we have to have $1 million in billing in county.
There's no minimum. They don't get one call. There's no fee.
And we are actually a nonprofit hospital.
Okay, but you're still charging me. So to me,
We're still charging, but that's...
you're making a problem, because I looked it up.
Yeah.
It's a $500 ambulance ride, and I have that insurance. And I know there are people who don't do different plans. I find this a little, I just find it concerning that the village is putting a higher burden on the residents. And I think that this is all little.
As opposed to what? You don't have enough volunteers to get out and make the phone. The calls and people are waiting half hour, 45 minutes for an ambulance to come.
I haven't heard any other solutions put forth by the board. This is the first I've heard of this problem. Village-wide, and I know from people I talked to, didn't even get an email, but I get a phone call when I get the cars off the street for the plows. But I didn't get any notification like that. And it is a reduction in service. And to say that it's not is to not tell the truth. Because right now, I pay my taxes for this, I am getting an assumption that the first due are my neighbors, they are the volunteers, they are the people who are giving their time. And now it's, oh my God, it's another bill.
Just that we do not have ALS support anymore, so just maybe you have a heart attack, our ambulance cannot help you. We have to.
Nassau County's there, they've been there for 10 years, they're there.
As Chief said, I had to cook a bagel the other day, so I'm just stating facts.
I just have a question about this first due, second due, because I know that there's a difference in the level of service between the BLS and ALS. So when calls are coming in, regardless of what it is, NYU Langone would be first due. So one of the kids is playing in the gym at the school, falls and is complaining his wrist hurts. Not obviously broken. You go to that call, and now someone's having a heart attack or a stroke 5 minutes later. Now the ALS ambulance is tied up with a basic call. Like, are the calls going to be prioritized coming in, and will a sprained wrist maybe go to Floral Park, or are you just first in line for everything?
No, that's what we're working on in terms of smoothing out the dispatching protocols. So if, for example, we are dispatched to the sprained wrist and we are en route and that heart attack comes over, we would work with dispatch. Dispatch would say, hey, if you have a higher critical call, redirect, go to that one instead, and then they would dispatch that sprained wrist out as a second due call. So it would have to be perfected, I guess, in terms of how we would make sure that the dispatch is clear in terms of making sure that the patients are getting the ambulance in terms of the advanced or basic life support.
Can I follow up on it? If you have started treatment, you're saying, could you abandon that patient for the more critical case if rescue orders respond?
If rescue was responding and
if they were there,
volunteers were on scene, absolutely, we could hand that patient off to you and go to the more critical call.
Mayor, you made a statement before. Are there statistics on how many calls rescue has not responded to? Just past year?
I don't have it, but I mean,
I don't know.
they're going,
Yes.
yes.
I'm sure there are.
Do you have it, Jim? or-
Well, through the end of October, approximately 20% of the calls were not handled by Floral Park's ambulance.
What percentage of those were second calls?
So, of those exact ones, I'm not sure, we could get that information.
Absolutely.
But we have had over 186 back-to-back calls, and back-to-back-to-back, and back-to-back-to-back. So there still are a large number of calls that would be handled by the second due ambulance or the village ambulance.
A couple times you mentioned that Garden City, we're modeling after Garden City, and we all understand that Garden City never had a rescue company at all prior to their engagement with NYU. I also know that they're utilizing St. Paul's as their, I'll call it home base, I don't know what else you call it. First of all, what are the requirements that NYU requires of the village in reference to a home base?
Really, honestly, it's just a space where our crew can sit, with heat, air conditioning, a bathroom, and Wi-Fi so that they can do their paperwork. Perhaps a shoreline to make sure that our ambulance is plugged in and has an active battery, and other than that, that's fine. It's up to the village where they would want us to be stationed and where that space would be available.
Has that been determined?
No, it's not. There's a number of options we're trying to get the best option as central as possible.
Have we had presentations from other ambulance companies?
There was, do you want to say this? I know you know.
Yeah, basically, and certainly Chief Dobson can fill this in better than I can. The fire department considered the two local ones, which was Northwell and NYU. My understanding is, and what I've heard and read, they are two very, very different models of service. One, NYU supplying a designated ambulance. One, Northwell, the ambulance would still be coming from a pool of ambulances that are staged somewhere locally. But none would be assigned specifically to Floral Park. Chief Dobson, is that correct?
That is correct.
I think it should
And
be
rescue would not be second due in those cases with the other company.
So rescue would be first bid?
Chief Dobson?
So if you took the Northwell model, they would just keep backfilling, 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 and then we would not be second.
I think Northwell should be for the opportunity for residents.
As the presentation went on, you talked about the vast experience that NYU has in New York City.
Yes.
21 ambulances, that sounds very complex. We're in an infancy stage here when you talk about Garden City and to Nassau County. A lot of things you bring up, protocol has to be determined. We have to look at that issue. There's a lot of nebulous items here. What
Yes.
kind of confidence does that instill in the community when you don't have answers for all this?
Well, we don't have answers because we want to make sure that it's right for your community. We don't want to give you a cookie cutter answer and say, well, this is what we're going to do, because what works for Garden City in terms of dispatching, in terms of how we're prioritizing call might not work for Floral Park. Because you have a higher incidence of back-to-back calls, that we might have to change some of our models for here and work with the existing dispatchers, work with police, work with fire department to make sure that it's right for Floral Park and not just right for the overall bigger nebulous
So
system.
the primary staffing model, the paramedic and EMT,
Yes.
is never going to meet the requirement 100%. Because as I stated, if you're handling the BLS call en route to the hospital, and an ALS call comes in, then we're going to have to revert back to what we use now in Nassau County. As the mayor said, 30 minutes from Baylor. But we've been using this model for 10, 15, 20 years. No disasters, no mishaps, no lawsuits against the village, incompetency. But that model's not going to meet that goal if you're already on the BLS call, is that correct?
Yes, but at the same time, healthcare is also changing drastically after COVID, where you have significant staffing shortages across the board, hospitals and EMS in Nassau County as a whole. You have ambulance shortages where now you have Nassau County, they have any given day, they might have ambulances that are unable to operate functionally in a mechanical sense. So we have to change in terms of understanding what's going on in healthcare as a whole and in what the community needs and in what the residents need and respond to that appropriately. So if a BLS and an ALS provider on each ambulance doesn't work, then we might have to shift and change our tactic in the future. We're open to that level of flexibility and making sure that the community's needs are met.
And it's important when you mention COVID, because in 2020, we had this very proposal floated, and it was defeated. And our company rose to the dedication level, and they were able to handle all those calls. Yet here we are, 2 years later, making efforts towards the same outcome, and I just want to know why. We can't get the straight numbers from the chief. We can't get data from the last year, the year before, to compare. Any analysis has to have going backwards. We don't have that number. We're just, and this gentleman said, the chief had a meeting with the rescue company on November 8th. 2 months later, 3 months later, we're ready to jump into this. Where's the input from the community?
It's here tonight.
Where's the robocall?
That's what tonight is about.
When we got to clear the roads, the call was at every house in the village. I don't understand.
That's this is the third board meeting you mentioned this at, so it's not like
we haven't had NYU here to give us the.
Well, we have schedules. This is the process.
Can you just speak a little bit about the level of experience of the personnel that would be working here and how they handle privacy issues and HIPAA compliance and what their backgrounds are sort of like?
Absolutely. So all of our personnel have participated in the New York State EMT course or the New York State EMT and paramedic course. So they are certified by New York State to be providers. We like to ensure that they have a number of years of experience in other 911 systems before we hire them here. We do extensive onboarding, so we train them in terms of all of our equipment and our systems and how we operate and all of those things. They also are required to refresh their HIPAA privacy training every single year as part of our hospital compliance. So they are reminded every single year about how we don't share patients' information, like all of those privacy practices are at the foremost of our minds.
As part of your onboarding system, do you do background checks on the employees? Because I know for the village here, we do background checks on a lot.
We do a number of screens. I don't know if a professional background check is done, but in order to become an EMT or paramedic, you have to pass a criminal background check that you haven't had any convictions. So in order to be certified by New York State, you can't have any convictions.
On that topic too, is there going to be a steady crew coming to this?
Absolutely. So we would have a dedicated schedule for crews. So our crews work 12-hour tours. So it would be what we like to call the beginning half of the week, and then the second half of the week, the end of the week. And it would be dedicated crews, given that no one's on vacation or on a sick day or anything like that. It would be the same familiar faces over and over. All of our crews in Garden City have built a really great rapport with a lot of the neighborhood, as well as the police department and other members of the community. They're very good. The guy at Starbucks recognizes them and knows their orders, kind of thing.
There's another question on Zoom. But there's somebody in the chat. How many paramedics does Floral Park Fire Department have?
Do you have any members of the company?
Or paramedics? None. Only someone on Zoom?
Yes. Cecile? I just asked her on you.
Hi, go ahead. Cecile?
Thank you. So have we considered the Garden City model in terms of why if we're essentially charging the patient, then why not just go full out with the Garden City model and then you can just eliminate the ambulance from the budget line and actually save the bills somewhere.
So this is the Garden City model, and the ambulance cost, we're just paying for the ambulance, and it's mostly, a couple of gasoline charges and a couple of upkeeps to the ambulance. But the main cost is personnel, if anything, and currently it's all volunteers. So the current cost of the ambulance to the village is not high.
I can't imagine that you're not carrying liability insurance. Liability insurance is the maintenance of the ambulance itself, or of course stopping jams in the ambulance.
So you're suggesting remove the ambulance from the budget totally and get rid of the
Well,
insurance?
look, if Garden City has 2 ambulances, why not do Floral Park? I mean, if it's on me or my insurance
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, no, I mean, you keep adding to, properties, because it's, where Patterson used to be, there's 10 houses there that have been added. Now you're building 20 units in Centennial Hall, and now you're doing multi-units on Covert Avenue, and yet my taxes keep going up. You're acidifying us for what? For revenue for the village. Find a way to save the residents some dollars for once.
Okay, thank you. Debbie, was that the next one?
She has a question in the chat.
We don't have trouble getting all the
She said, has the village considered a paid EMT department?
Meaning that we would administrate the whole thing? No, but that's, that would be a significant added cost to the village and the taxpayers who would not use the service.
I'll object for the moment, it might equal the deductible you pay on Medicare for each resident.
Let's go back to the service, and would we still use a 911 system?
Yes.
It would still be 911?
Yes.
And you would be dispatched through?
The police department.
Through the 911 system?
Yes.
And if you were not available, the 911 system would roll it over to the next one? Or is that up to you to do?
No, it would follow the same matrix that it currently does, where it would get rolled over to the next due and then rolled over to the next due from there. So it would go, if we were unavailable, then it would go to the volunteers, and if volunteers weren't available, it would go to Nassau County. It's automatically.
So it's not you doing it,
Right.
it's the 911 system?
Yes.
And if the Nassau County system had two on an ambulance, we wouldn't be having this discussion, is that right?
If Nassau County had a driver.
Had the driver always available, we would be okay.
I wouldn't say that.
I don't know. I don't
I
think
wouldn't
so.
say that.
No? Okay, I'm in.
Yeah, no, it takes a long time sometimes for Nassau County.
It takes what?
Time for Nassau County to get here. It's really not necessarily about the police having to drive it back. That's just an
I don't know, I mean, I've seen Nassau County here with us almost anytime, and I can't judge, but you guys know better than me. But I mean, any call that I've been connected to, the county seems to be there. And some people are even saying, why is the county here? They're here so fast. So, I don't know, is that across the board, we feel that the county is not viable anymore?
For this model too, it doesn't
I don't want to put words in it, but I'm just asking, if they had two on a truck and we didn't require a police officer to go out, would we be in a better position? Maybe that should have been the way I asked it.
No, I don't think, that's not really the driving issue in this sense.
Okay.
With this model, even if Nassau County second due, it still can take them 30 minutes to get to our village.
Yes. It depends on where they're coming from.
So it's not going to be much of a difference from our rescue people. It's not going to be much of a difference.
No, but if we were here, we would be less than 10 minutes.
What's their time?
And right now, 14 days, I'm talking nearby, this resident just said, so they're there before we get there, and they're willing to collaborate with us. They come on a bus, they do services, and then they get off. Unless they think it's needed, but it's very rare. They work very well with rescue people. And sometimes they're in the city in Elmont, which they come right for, they're sitting around somewhere. That resident's correct.
Yes.
Yeah, can we get down to the real crux of it? We have about 12 active members in rescue. We cannot cover the village 7 by 24. We need some assistance. I've been in it for close to 50 years. This is the lowest manpower we have ever had. We bring in new people, generally youngsters, from my perspective, come in for a year or so and go to medical school, nursing school, PA school. This is not a question of who's going to get billed. It's not a question of is the county available. It's a question, can we, with 12 people that are active, provide a service to the village? We've had to back off ALS. I was one of the ALS providers. There's only 2 of us left. The rest of them are very competent EMTs, but they can only stretch so far. It was very fortunate we had a whole run of calls over the weekend that happened to be when people were home. During the week, there's 3 people, maybe 4, available during the daytime hours. Let's be honest. The problem is we don't have enough person power, old-fashioned, I say manpower, to cover the village 7 by 24. We don't provide any less service anymore. I don't think anybody having a heart attack is going to quibble about an ambulance bill. The question is, can we provide the service? And I will say it right now. I don't think we can. We try, but some people are burning out. Some people are doing well beyond what they should be, and we have other people who aren't doing enough. But it's still problems. So you can talk about money, you can talk about the county that miraculously appears. Yes, they do. On maybe 10% of our calls, 20% of our calls. We still have a lot of other calls. We need something to help us. I'm also resigning on my 80th birthday in October.
I grew up here, and you were at my house a couple of times when my sisters or I got hurt, and when my baby was choking, and you know, I've always been very grateful for the comfort of knowing that someone would always be there in our moment of most need. With that said, so let's say, I know you're never supposed to say it's a quiet day, right, in law enforcement. You're never supposed to say those things, sorry. But what are some of the things that your team might be doing in our community to build some of those relationships?
Sure, absolutely. So, for example, we recently participated in Business Day. I know that that's a huge event here in Floral Park. We provide hands-only CPR training during some of those events. We've provided athletic standbys for various high school and we over at Long Island University do that right now. We provide standby coverage for them as well. I know that there's a number of road running races. We provide standby coverage. We do that for the Turkey Trot in Garden City every year.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
That would be in addition to our regular crew.
Yes, and no
on
cost.
those special days.
Yes, and at no cost. So, you know, any sort of training or community outreach that, you know, is deemed, you know, desirable, that we can provide, we would like to participate in. So, you know, stop the bleed, you know, trying to get training for active shooter drills. There's a number of different things that we can and have done in the past to provide, you know, for the community.
And like I said, there'll always be a police officer there, so there'll be another friendly face, and at least 2/3 of the department live here, so.
Yes, sir.
So I'm in the department 45 years, I'm the chief of 10. Commend Ed for coming out with the truth on that. Back in 2014, the chief staff implemented a dual response with the county bus. So what everybody's saying about getting billed from you get billed from the county already since 2014. It's what you're saying, we're doing already. We're already doing it. The only difference is we don't have the ALS team walking in your door when you're having a cardiac arrest. That's the difference. So if I have to pay you $500 to save my family member, I'll be more than happy to do it.
Yes, sir.
In fairness to the rest of your company and John, I agree with you 100%. The change has been a change in society, where we talk about calling an ambulance for a sprained wrist, where mom and dad used to take it over to Winthrop and the Nassau Hospital in its day. That's the change, and that's what's put the demand on the volunteer fire service across the county, where being a first 2 ambulance in Nassau County, where I think there's only 3 left, of the 71 fire departments, that's the problem. Throw on top of that the training requirements and everything. That's why we're here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, I mean, I just want to respond to that comment that says nothing's different, because I think it is, because in this case, anytime you call the ambulance, it's gonna cost you money. Right now, if I call an ambulance, Floral Park is first due, and they come in, it doesn't cost me any money, unless I need ALS or the ambulance is tied up. So I do think it's a change. I don't know if it's needed. I don't know if all of the volunteer companies are having problems with maintaining enough personnel. And I don't know if there's something that can be done, but, and I think it is important to talk about the money because it does make an impact. And there are people who will avoid care or delay care because they don't want to incur a bill. So I think it needs to be talked about. I'm not sure that this change can be necessarily avoided, but
At the end of the day, if the bill is not paid, does it go to a collection agency? Correct. So if you don't pay the bill, there's no difference than you paid the bill.
Correct. It gets written off.
It's another paragraph of the agreement.
Like what I just said.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
So, I call the ambulance for whatever, and the ambulance shows up, and now I need an ALS person. They don't have it, just they, now you have to wait for the county to be called in. You're still gonna get a bill. But now the time is delayed to help you. That's the point. The time, right? We know how the time goes, right? You call the PD, they have their recorded line or whatever, they call Firecom dispatches whoever, us or them. So there's a lot of time wasted. Now they get on the scene and Floral Park's there for ALS and they don't have it. Now you're gonna add on another X amount of time for the county to come in, still getting it.
well, maybe there should be a way to triage the calls when they come in and dispatch the appropriate services to begin with. So if I call you and say, you know, I fell downstairs and I can't stand on my leg, you dispatch a BLS ambulance. And if I call you and say, you know, I have chest pains, then you don't have Floral Park first due because they're not ALS. You call somebody else immediately.
You fall down the stage, you got a neck injury, head injury, you're gonna need an ALS, so.
I see three more hands raised. If you just take those questions from Mr. Rothenberg, Lynn Willie, and Justice Hayden.
Yeah, you never know what the call is going to be, because what the person says, or who calls it in, says one thing. When we get there, when they get there, when the county gets there, it can be entirely different. The person who fell down the stairs might have fallen down because they had a heart attack, or they had a stroke, and they need some intervention then, not in another 5 or 10 minutes.
Mayor, my question is to Chief O'Grady. Chief O'Grady, you give statistics a lot, and you seem to be very confident with your statistics with the job that you have. You just said something that I'd ask you to amplify. Did you just say that 3 out of 71 fire departments are now doing first due?
That's correct.
Okay.
At one time it was 7, in 2006 it was 7, now I believe it's down to 3.
And based upon your experience, why is that?
For the same reason we're here tonight.
And why is that?
The volunteers can't keep up with it, the number of calls keep increasing, the support from the county keeps diminishing or being degraded.
Thank you.
And the lack of new volunteers and the time the new volunteer has to put in order to be certified. Lynn Willie.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everybody for your time. I'd like to, first off, I've been doing this for 14 or 15 years, just as a BLS provider. And I could challenge anybody saying 90% of our calls here in Floral Park are BLS calls. And we don't necessarily need ALS for almost the majority of our calls. We're 7 minutes away from any hospital. If I put a patient in the back of the rig, I am certainly confident enough to get them to the hospital, breathing, and safe. I'm not saying I'm not going to call for ALS for a loved one, and I sure as hell would want an ALS provider for my loved one or my family, or for that matter, any fire department member or their family, or police department member and their family. But when push comes to shove, we're getting to the hospital, we're getting to their state, and the county gets to us. I'm telling you, they get there almost all the time right now. And let me tell you, there's been times that we've had to wait on scene for, 10 or 15 minutes. There was one time when I waited an extended period of time with a diabetic. But it's far and few in between. And people are making it sound like we're waiting for like 45 minutes or an hour for the county. We're not. And what we're doing right now, we're first due, I get it, there aren't many of us in rescue still responding, but I don't see a reason that we should be rushing into this. I mean, if people read through, I still think the village residents are going to end up getting bills, and until I see it written into a contract that says it's not going to bounce back to collections, and that, some people have a $500 deductible for a ambulance ride, and that, for people that are budgeting money, that's going to be an issue.
Is there any more questions on Zoom, Billy? Then we'll take our last question from Chief Mike.
Point of information, when we first got the ambulance, there was no paramedics. The first AMT in 1980 was me. And it was a short time later that we were running with 3 AMTs. The ambulance rolls, whether it's ALS or BLS. You never even know until you get to the call what it's going to be.
Anything else on Zoom?
Monica Altman just asked, are they connected to Smart 911? She registered for Smart 911 and wants to make sure that they can get into her house when she was alone. Is that something?
So any of those things, we would potentially collect information in order to do that. A lot of that stuff goes through the police side, so that information would come to the police dispatcher, and the dispatcher would share that information with us.
So before we wrap it up, I'd like to ask if any of the chiefs have any closing comments that they'd like to make before we...
Yeah, I mean, I've been on those calls that do last 40 minutes, that do last an hour. As Eddie Rothberg said, we just can't cut the number of calls that we have. We put out membership drives, we put out signs. We don't get the volunteers that we need to increase the ranks. We've been doing it since 2014 with the county service. I don't see that there's a change. I think this is a much needed addition to be able to provide the correct service, the level of care that we need for our residents. And that's always my concern, the level of care for our residents.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess if any folks have any further comments, they can send them to comments@fpvillage.org, and certainly take into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.